Spring 1941. Western Desert, Libya. The Italian mechanic stared at the disabled British Crusader tank, its engine compartment exposed like an anatomical specimen. After 2 years maintaining temperamental Fiat M13 40 tanks across the North African theatre, the distinctive Continental engine before him represented both familiar challenge and profound discontinuity. This was an enemy machine, yet the British lieutenant was asking him to repair it. Across the Libyan desert that spring, approximately 7,900 Italian vehicle mechanics and technicians found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Captured during Operation Compass, when British forces decisively defeated the Italian 10th Army, these specialized prisoners confronted a reality that contradicted everything fascist propaganda had taught them about British desperation. They discovered an enemy that valued technical expertise over ideological purity, practical solutions over punitive treatment, and mechanical ingenuity over national loyalty. These skilled men, trained in Turin's automotive factories and Rome's military academies, would become unlikely participants in one of the war's most unusual collaborations. The arithmetic of necessity was being calculated in broken crankshafts and damaged transmissions, revealing a British pragmatism that rendered Italian expectations not just incorrect, but incomprehensible. What began as impromptu requests for assistance would evolve into a systematic program of astonishing scope and impact. The desert's harsh realities. The North African campaign's distinctive environment created mechanical challenges unknown in European theatres. Temperatures fluctuating from 120 degrees daytime to near freezing nights, fine sand penetrating every seal and filter, acute water shortages that made radiator maintenance a constant struggle. These conditions destroyed vehicles at unprecedented rates, with British quartermaster records showing tank losses to mechanical failure exceeding combat losses by 3.1 ratio during early 1941. Royal Army Service Corps documents reveal that by March 1941, the British 7th Armoured Division's operational readiness had fallen to 37% of its Crusader tanks. Field workshops struggled with insufficient spare parts, limited technical manuals, and exhausted personnel. Meanwhile, sitting in POW collection points were Italian mechanics, men who had maintained similar machines under identical desert conditions for years. The first encounters emerged from desperation rather than strategy. At a temporary holding facility near Tobruk, Captain James Whitworth, commanding a field workshop with 16 disabled tanks and only 7 functional mechanics, observed Italian prisoners repairing their own captured transport trucks. Military records document his unorthodox decision, requisitioning 5 Italian mechanics to examine a Crusader with a failed transmission. According to Whitworth's after-action report dated April 17, 1941, the Italian NCO identified the issue within 20 minutes, a problem we had diagnosed incorrectly for 3 days. With proper supervision and limited tools, they completed repairs in 7 hours. The tank returned to service immediately. This initial success, born of battlefield necessity, contradicted established protocols. Geneva Convention guidelines permitted voluntary work by prisoners but explicitly prohibited work directly supporting enemy war operations. British field commanders, facing critical equipment shortages, began disregarding this distinction through careful language. Tank repairs became classified as general maintenance duties in official documentation. The captured Italian mechanics approached these early requests with trepidation. Sergeant Paolo Rinaldi, later interviewed for the Imperial War Museum's oral history collection, recalled, "We expected punishment, perhaps execution, for refusing to work on British tanks. Instead, we received extra rations when we repaired them. This contradiction confounded us completely." British records confirm this incentive system developed organically. Mechanics who successfully repaired vehicles received supplemental rations, 4 ounces of tinned beef, extra cigarettes, occasional chocolate, improved sleeping quarters. These material benefits, modest by British standards, represented significant improvements over standard POW provisions. The technical challenges bridged national divisions. The Continental R975 radial engines powering Crusader tanks shared fundamental engineering principles with Italian power plants. Transmission systems, while differently configured, operated on universal mechanical concepts. Italian mechanics discovered their expertise transferred readily to British equipment, often identifying innovative solutions that eluded British technicians. Military engineering records document early Italian improvisations. At a workshop near Mersa Matruh, captured mechanics fabricated replacement cooling system components using salvaged Italian parts. Near Alexandria, Italian prisoners modified air filtration systems based on designs they had developed for desert operations. Each success diminished resistance to this unorthodox arrangement. By May 1941, what began as isolated incidents had evolved into informal policy. British commanders, recognizing the value of Italian technical expertise, began requesting specific skill sets when processing prisoners. Documents from British 8th Army headquarters reference requests for skilled vehicle technicians, particularly those with Fiat or Lancia factory experience. The initial statistics revealed the program's growing impact. Between April and June 1941, approximately 215 armoured vehicles were serviced or repaired with Italian assistance. These represented approximately 19% of total British repairs during this period, a significant contribution from men who weeks earlier had maintained enemy equipment. For the Italian mechanics, this bizarre reversal of circumstances created profound confusion. They had surrendered, expecting captivity's deprivations. Instead, they found themselves valued for the same skills they had employed against the British. This contradictory position, simultaneously prisoner and essential worker, began a psychological transformation that would accelerate in coming months. As Lieutenant Michael Barrington noted in his June 1941 memorandum to Desert Rat's headquarters, the Italian mechanics initially approached British vehicles with reluctance, then curiosity, now genuine enthusiasm. They take pride in their work, regardless of which army benefits. This unexpected development suggests possibilities beyond emergency repair services. The transformation had begun, though its full implications remained unrealized. In workshops across Egypt and Libya, Italian prisoners bent over British engines, their hands communicating what language barriers obscured. Each repaired tank became another calculation in the equation of pragmatism overcoming ideology. The Desert War's next phase would require more than battlefield victory. It would demand mechanical reliability that only these unlikely collaborators could provide. Summer 1941. Workshop Compound C, Kassersin Camp, Egypt. The transformation of standard prisoner enclosures into functioning repair facilities proceeded with methodical British efficiency. What had been bare desert plots surrounded by barbed wire evolved into specialized mechanical compounds with distinctive sections for engine repair, transmission work, electrical systems, and final testing. Each morning at 0600 hours, Italian mechanics in their distinctive prisoner uniforms with added blue workshop armbands would file through checkpoints, exchanging the confinement of prisoner barracks for the familiar comfort of tools and machinery. The technical specifications of British armoured vehicles presented both challenges and opportunities for the Italian specialists. The Crusader tank's Nuffield Liberty engine delivered 340 horsepower from its 12 cylinders, 27% more powerful than the Fiat SPA 8T engine the Italians had maintained in their M13 40 tanks. The Continental R975 radial engine in the American-supplied Stuart tanks operated at fundamentally different tolerances than Italian power plants. British technical manuals, when available at all, used unfamiliar terminology and measurement systems. Workshop records document Italian mechanics creating handwritten conversion charts, imperial to metric, British terminology to Italian equivalents, torque specifications translated across systems. The logistical challenges created perpetual improvisation. British supply lines stretched 2,000 miles from factories to desert workshops. Spare parts arrived irregularly, often for outdated models. Military acquisition records from July 1941 show requisitions for 347 Crusader transmission components, with only 108 fulfilled within 30 days. Tool availability created further complications. Italian mechanics, trained on metric systems, struggled initially with imperial wrenches and measuring devices. Campo Prigionieri di Guerra 306 near Alexandria documented requests for Italian pattern tools if available, and measurement conversion charts for all workshop areas. Despite these obstacles, official documentation confirms the program's expanding success. British 8th Army records from August 1941 show 412 armoured vehicles returned to service after repairs involving Italian prisoner labour, a 91% increase over the previous quarter. Average repair times decreased from 14 days to 8.5 days for comparable damage. Workshop efficiency reports note: Italian techniques for air filter maintenance have been adopted as standard practice, reducing engine failures by approximately 22% under desert conditions. The psychological transformation among the Italian mechanics accelerated through summer 1941. Sergeant Mario Vincenzo, captured near Bardia and assigned to Workshop Compound C, later recalled, "At first I sabotaged slightly, loosening fittings that would fail later, adjusting timings improperly. But after 3 weeks, strange pride emerged. These were magnificent machines, deserving proper care. Eventually, I found myself correcting British mechanics when they took shortcuts." British authorities recognized this evolving commitment and implemented increasingly sophisticated incentive systems. Workshop productivity records linked directly to prisoner privileges. Italian mechanics who exceeded repair quotas received expanded rations. Standard portions plus supplemental allowances of 6 ounces of canned meat weekly, 4 ounces of cheese, cigarettes, occasional beer rations limited to 2 pints weekly. Successful repair teams gained access to improved facilities, separate barracks with electric lighting, wireless radio access during evening hours, expanded recreational areas. This pragmatic approach yielded measurable results. Military efficiency reports from September 1941 document Italian-assisted workshops averaged 17% higher output than standard Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers facilities with equivalent equipment and supplies. Italian techniques for transmission repairs have reduced component replacement requirements by approximately 23%. A comparative technical analysis revealed unexpected insights. British Valentine tanks, with their compact design and simplified maintenance access, impressed Italian specialists accustomed to the maintenance-intensive M13-40s. Conversely, Italian mechanics introduced several innovations to British practice. Improved sand filtration systems adapted from Fiat designs. Modified lubrication schedules, optimized for desert heat. Simplified track tensioning procedures that reduced maintenance time by 35%, according to workshop records. Personal accounts reveal the complex emotions this work evoked. Corporal Enzo Bertoli, captured at Tobruk and assigned to Kassassin, wrote in a letter, partially censored but preserved in military archives, "The English treat us with professional respect I never anticipated. Yesterday, Lieutenant Morris asked my opinion on a valve timing problem as if I were a colleague, not a prisoner. I found myself answering with complete honesty, forgetting momentarily we are enemies. Is this betrayal or simply being a good mechanic? I no longer know." The ethical dilemmas intensified as repaired vehicles returned visibly to combat. Workshop records from October 1941 document 37 tanks repaired with Italian assistance, subsequently damaged in combat operations against Axis forces. Several Italian mechanics requested transfers to non-vehicle maintenance duties. British authorities responded by creating a careful distance between repair work and combat outcomes. Workshop compound locations moved further from frontline reporting. Daily bulletins eliminated specific information about vehicle deployment. The first major success of this unusual program came during Operation Crusader in November 1941. British after-action reports credit extraordinary workshop efficiency with maintaining operational readiness at 71% throughout the offensive, nearly double the rate during previous operations. Italian influence modifications to cooling systems and sand filters proved particularly valuable during extended desert operations. As 1941 ended, what had begun as emergency expediency evolved into systematic procedure. British military administrators formalized the program with structured documentation, regulations for the employment of technical prisoners in support operations. This 17-page document, issued December 1941, established protocols for security, incentives, technical standards, and chain of command. The unorthodox collaboration had become official policy, though its full potential remained unrealized. In workshops across Egypt, the relationship between captor and captured evolved through shared technical challenges. Language barriers diminished through a growing lexicon of simplified English mechanical terms pronounced with Italian inflection. National differences became less relevant than the universal satisfaction of mechanical problems solved. Each repaired vehicle represented another calculation in an equation neither side had anticipated, necessity creating collaboration that transcended enmity. Winter, 1942. Vehicle Workshop Division, El Alamein Sector. The metallic ping of wrenches against engine blocks echoed across the expanded workshop compound as British Corporal Thomas Harrington bent over a Stuart tank's exposed transmission. The Italian mechanic beside him, Sergeant Leone Fabri, pointed to a bearing assembly, explaining in halting English supplemented with hand gestures. "No good. Questa parte. How you say? This part needs change." The British soldier nodded, reaching for the replacement component. 2 years earlier, these men had been trying to kill each other. Now they collaborated with the focused intensity of colleagues pursuing a common goal. This scene, documented in multiple eyewitness accounts, exemplified the evolving relationship between captors and captured. Official workshop records from February 1942 note: working relationships between Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers personnel and Italian technical prisoners have progressed from supervised labour to collaborative problem solving. British technicians now routinely consult Italian counterparts on complex repair issues. The knowledge exchange accelerated throughout early 1942. British mechanics, often with limited formal training due to wartime personnel shortages, learned systematic diagnostic approaches from Italians who had completed extensive factory apprenticeships. Workshop efficiency reports document British adoption of Italian sequential testing protocols that reduced diagnostic time by approximately 35%. Conversely, Italian mechanics absorbed British emphasis on standardization and interchangeability, concepts less developed in Italian military manufacturing. This technical cross-pollination yielded measurable benefits. Tank repair completion rates increased from 4.7 vehicles weekly in January 1942 to 8.3 vehicles weekly by April, using identical personnel and equipment. Mean time between failures for repaired vehicles extended from 340 operational hours to 490 hours during the same period, a 44% improvement attributed to enhanced maintenance protocols developed through combined expertise. What began as emergency expediency evolved into systematic policy. In March 1942, British Middle East Command issued Technical Directive 17C, Utilization of Specialist Prisoner Resources, expanding the program beyond emergency repairs to preventative maintenance, design modification, and technical training. The Prisoner Mechanic Initiative grew from 1,200 participants in January 1942 to over 3,400 by June, operating in 27 dedicated workshop facilities across Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. Military transport records document the program's expansion to new theatres. In May 1942, 215 select Italian mechanics travelled under guard to workshops in Palestine, establishing maintenance facilities for vehicles withdrawn from desert operations. By July, specialised teams deployed to Cyprus, supporting British Eastern Mediterranean operations. Each expansion replicated the core model while adapting to local conditions and equipment profiles. Communication barriers diminished through an evolving technical language. Workshop logs record the emergence of what British officers termed Itanglish, a specialised pidgin combining Italian technical terminology, simplified English, and universal mechanical references. A British staff sergeant's report noted, "The phrase differenziale caput fix now is perfectly comprehensible to all workshop personnel regardless of nationality." Official assessment of the programme's value appears in multiple military documents. A British 8th Army analysis dated June 1942 states, "The employment of Italian technical prisoners has transformed our maintenance capabilities. Conservative estimates indicate these specialists have returned to service 1,700 plus vehicles that would otherwise remain inoperative due to personnel shortages and technical challenges." Statistical comparisons reveal the programme's impact. Repair facilities utilising Italian expertise averaged 40% higher output than conventional workshops during mid-1942. Vehicles serviced by combined Anglo-Italian teams demonstrated 27% fewer return repairs within 30 days. Most significantly, operational readiness rates for armoured units supported by these specialised workshops maintained 65 to 70% availability throughout the critical months preceding El Alamein, substantially higher than the 40–45% rates typical of earlier desert operations. The personal transformations paralleled professional developments. Technical Sergeant Vittorio Canepa, captured at Sollum and initially resistant to assisting British forces, wrote in a censored letter home, "I have made an unusual discovery. The English mechanics are not enemies when we face a broken engine together. They respect knowledge regardless of uniform. Yesterday, Captain Morris implemented my suggestion for cooling system modifications on all workshop vehicles. I felt pride that contradicts everything I should feel as a prisoner." British perspectives shifted similarly. Lieutenant William Harrison's official report states, "The Italian automotive specialists have fundamentally altered our approach to desert vehicle maintenance. Their technical abilities frequently exceed our own personnel's expertise, particularly regarding improvisation under resource constraints. We have as much to learn from them as they from us." Technical innovations emerged from this unlikely collaboration. Italian mechanics, familiar with operating under severe part shortages in North Africa, introduced extensive component reconditioning techniques. Workshop inventories from August 1942 list specialized equipment for rebuilding bearings, rescaling hydraulic systems, and reclaiming damaged gears, all based on Italian field methods. British technical bulletins formally adopted these approaches, with Technical Circular 42-7 titled Component Reclamation Techniques, Italian Methods, distributed to all Middle East Command workshops. Resistance persisted among some prisoners and British personnel alike. Security reports document approximately 140 Italian mechanics, 4.1% of participants, requesting reassignment to standard prisoner duties during 1942, citing moral concerns regarding repair of combat vehicles. Similarly, British workshop commanders occasionally reported reluctance among some personnel to acknowledge prisoner expertise or implement their recommendations regardless of technical merit. The programme's official recognition came in September 1942 with the formation of dedicated Anglo-Italian technical units with standardised procedures, specialised security protocols, and formal recognition in British Order of Battle documents. These units received distinctive insignia, a wrench and gear wheel on a blue-red background, worn by both British staff and Italian prisoners within workshop compounds. By autumn 1942, as Rommel's Africa Corps faced increasing pressure and the war in North Africa approached its climax, The workshop collaboration had transformed from anomalous emergency measure to institutional practice. In preparation areas behind El Alamein, Italian mechanics worked double shifts, preparing British armour for the coming offensive, their hands helping craft the vehicles that would ultimately defeat their own nation's forces. Spring 1943. Technical Workshop Compound 12, Alexandria, Egypt. The open engine compartment of the Sherman tank gleamed in the morning sunlight as 5 men, 3 Italian prisoners and 2 British soldiers, gathered around it. "What approach should we take?" asked British Sergeant Wells, genuinely seeking input rather than issuing orders. Each man offered an assessment: the blocked cooling system, the irregular timing, potential solutions. No one pulled rank. No one dismissed another's input. After 5 minutes of discussion, they settled on a diagnostic sequence proposed by an Italian corporal, then divided tasks based on individual expertise rather than nationality or military status. This democratic problem-solving approach contradicted everything the Italian mechanics had experienced in their own military. Technical Sergeant Giancarlo Rossi, captured at Bardia and interviewed decades later for the Imperial War Museum's oral history collection, recalled, "In the Italian army, the officer would command regardless of technical knowledge. Solutions came from above, never below. In British workshops, the best idea won regardless of rank. This seemed chaotic initially, but I soon recognized its effectiveness." The engine doesn't care about insignia. British workshop culture emphasized practical results over hierarchical procedure. Workshop logs document daily tea conferences where technical challenges received collective attention. A typical entry from April 1943 notes, "Cooling system redesign for Sherman tanks operating in high-temperature conditions discussed over morning tea." Italian POW Bonetti's suggestion for modified water pump housing adopted after demonstration on test engine. Implementation scheduled for all workshop units within 7 days. The technical education flowed in both directions. British authorities provided Italian mechanics with complete technical manuals, previously restricted as classified materials. Workshop inventories from March 1943 list technical library resources, including factory service documentation for all Allied vehicle types, engineering diagrams of component systems, and specialized repair guides. These resources, unavailable to Italian forces during active combat, represented knowledge transfer of significant military value. Italian mechanics gained unprecedented insights into British logistics systems. Workshop requisition procedures exposed supply chain management techniques more advanced than Axis equivalents. POW Technical Sergeant Marco Vitelli noted in a censored letter, "The British parts tracking system ensures components reach workshops within predictable timeframes. Our army in Africa often waited months for critical parts without information. Here, each requisition receives a tracking number with estimated delivery date. This small difference explains much about our respective military effectiveness." Comparative technical standards revealed contrasting national approaches. Italian design emphasized elegance and theoretical efficiency, but often sacrificed maintainability. British engineering prioritized standardization and field repairability over optimal performance. Workshop efficiency reports document how these philosophies merged in practice. Italian precision maintenance techniques applied to British standardized components have yielded optimal outcomes, combining serviceability with enhanced performance. Daily life in these workshop compounds developed distinctive rhythms. Military records detail the typical schedule. Work commenced at 0700 hours after tea and briefing, continued until 1200 hours, resumed at 1300 after midday meal, and concluded at 1800. Unlike conventional POW labor, mechanics received regular rest days and rotation between demanding and routine tasks. These humane conditions reflected both Geneva Convention requirements and practical recognition that skilled technical work required physical and mental freshness. The statistical impact of these collaborative workshops became increasingly apparent through 1943. Quartermaster records document 4,700 plus armoured vehicles repaired or serviced by Anglo-Italian technical teams between January and June 1943. Operational readiness rates for British armoured units in the Mediterranean theatre maintained 75–80% throughout this period, significantly higher than comparable forces without access to these specialised resources. A British Eighth Army assessment calculated that the programme effectively added the equivalent of 7 full RME, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, companies to maintenance capacity without requiring additional personnel from Britain. Formal recognition of Italian contributions began appearing in official documentation. The Technical Services Commendation, issued by General Montgomery's headquarters in May 1943, specifically acknowledged the exceptional technical contributions of Italian specialist personnel working under POW status within RME workshop facilities. This public acknowledgement, extraordinary for enemy prisoners, reflected the programme's undeniable value to Allied operations. The technology itself became a vehicle for ideological exchange. Italian mechanics accustomed to fascist economic models, with centralised control and emphasis on national self-sufficiency, encountered a different approach embodied in Allied equipment. The standardization of components across American, British and Canadian vehicles demonstrated industrial cooperation across democratic nations. The Sherman tank, with interchangeable parts produced by multiple manufacturers to identical specifications, represented a manufacturing philosophy impossible under autarkic fascist economics. Personal anecdotes from this period illustrate the programme's human dimension. Workshop logs from Cairo document an incident where an Italian master mechanic diagnosed a systemic timing fault in Valentine tanks that had eluded British technicians for months. His solution, implemented across all regional workshops, reduced engine failures by 47%. The British commanding officer organised a special dinner honouring this contribution, with expanded rations for all prisoners in the technical unit. Cultural exchanges extended beyond mechanical knowledge. British tea breaks, formalised pauses regardless of workload, initially confused Italian prisoners accustomed to working until task completion. Workshop records note Italian mechanics gradually embraced this practice, while British personnel adopted aspects of Italian food culture. The Alexandria workshop compound reported Italian prisoners establishing a small herb garden for improving mess hall meals. British personnel contributed tea and sugar, while Italians cultivated basil, oregano and rosemary, creating an improvised culinary exchange alongside technical collaboration. By summer 1943, as Allied forces secured North Africa and prepared for the Italian campaign, the workshop programme had evolved from emergency expedient to established institution. The approaching Italian armistice would transform these prisoner mechanics' status again, but the foundation of professional respect and technical cooperation had already created something unprecedented. A community defined by shared technical values that transcended national allegiances. In workshops across the Mediterranean theatre, Italian and British personnel bent together over engines and transmissions, their hands speaking a universal language of mechanical precision, while their minds gradually absorbed lessons extending far beyond vehicle repair. Each fixed tank represented another calculation in the equation of practical cooperation overwhelming ideological division, a lesson that would extend beyond the war into the rebuilding of a continent. September 1943. Allied Forces Headquarters, Algiers. The radio crackled with the voice of Marshal Pietro Badoglio, announcing Italy's unconditional surrender. In workshop compounds across North Africa, Egypt, and the Middle East, the declaration transformed 7,165 Italian mechanic prisoners into something unprecedented, co-belligerents still wearing prisoner uniforms. For men who had spent years maintaining vehicles for their captors, this political realignment merely formalized a practical collaboration long established in grease-stained hands and shared technical knowledge. The Italian armistice fundamentally altered the programme's framework. Allied military documentation from October 1943 reclassified Italian technical personnel from prisoners of war to Italian military internees, and finally to cooperative Italian personnel within a 3-week period. This rapid status evolution reflected both diplomatic necessity and operational reality. These mechanics had already proven their value beyond conventional prisoner labor. Now their contribution could be officially acknowledged and expanded. The transition to co-belligerent status accelerated the program's formalization. In November 1943, Allied Force Headquarters issued Directive 107C, establishing Italian Service Units, ISUs, with standardized organization, distinct insignia, and modified uniforms. Technical Service Units represented the most numerous category, with vehicle maintenance ISUs comprising 47% of total strength, according to Allied administrative records. These units retained Italian command structures under Allied supervision, a significant departure from the direct integration that characterized earlier workshop operations. Technical contributions expanded beyond repair to design modification. Workshop records from Alexandria document Italian specialists developing improved cooling systems for Sherman tanks operating in desert conditions. A British engineering assessment dated December 1943 states, "Modifications to radiator shrouding designed by Technical Sergeant Bianchi have reduced engine operating temperatures by an average of 7 degrees Celsius during high-temperature operation." This single innovation has decreased engine failures by approximately 23% in affected units. Similar technical improvisations appear throughout service records. Enhanced sand filtration systems, modified transmission mounts, reducing vibration damage, redesigned fuel delivery components. Statistical impact metrics demonstrate the program's expanded scope following the armistice. Allied Forces maintenance records indicate that Italian service units contributed to the repair or servicing of approximately 12,400 vehicles during the final quarter of 1943, a 38% increase over previous peak output. Operational readiness rates for Allied armoured units in the Mediterranean theatre reached unprecedented levels, with British 8th Army reporting 82% of armoured vehicles operationally available throughout the Italian campaign's initial phases. This maintenance miracle directly influenced combat effectiveness, with field commanders reporting exceptional mechanical reliability during extended operations. The contrast between Italian and German POWs became increasingly apparent. While Italian technical personnel transitioned to cooperative status, German prisoners remained under strict supervision with limited work roles. A British intelligence assessment from January 1944 noted, "German technical prisoners consistently demonstrate resistance to cooperation beyond minimum requirements. Unlike Italian personnel who regularly exceed performance expectations, German prisoners rarely volunteer technical expertise or suggest improvements." This divergence reflected both cultural differences and pragmatic calculations about Germany's continued fighting status versus Italy's changed allegiance. Personal success stories emerged as the program expanded. Technical Sergeant Paolo Rinaldi, previously a Fiat factory engineer before military service, received formal commendation for redesigning fuel filtration systems across multiple tank types. Staff Sergeant Mario Lanza, a former racing car mechanic from Milan, developed diagnostic protocols that reduced troubleshooting time by 40%, according to workshop efficiency reports. These individual contributions, documented in military records, received increasingly public recognition as political circumstances permitted acknowledging Italian assistance. Official documentation reflecting this changed relationship appears throughout late 1943. The British Middle East Command Technical Services Bulletin from December 1943 explicitly credits Italian technical personnel of the 15th Cooperative Maintenance Unit with developing improved desert maintenance procedures. American Technical Service Command reports similarly acknowledge valuable contributions from attached Italian specialist units in establishing maintenance facilities for American equipment. These official recognitions, unthinkable earlier in the war, reflected both the armistice and the undeniable value these technicians provided. Legacy planning began well before combat operations concluded. Allied training directives from early 1944 established programs where Italian technical personnel instructed Allied mechanics in specialized repair techniques. Workshop schedules document regular knowledge transfer sessions, with titles like Italian Methods for Limited Resource Component Rebuilding and Expedient Field Repairs Using Minimal Equipment. This systematic effort to preserve Italian technical approaches represented tacit acknowledgement of their value beyond immediate military necessity. The psychological transformation completed its arc for many participants. Sergeant Lorenzo Calabria, who had begun the war maintaining Italian tanks in Libya before capture at Tobruk, wrote in a letter home, now preserved in military archives, "When I was taken prisoner, I considered it the worst moment of my life. Now I understand it was merely a transition to something unexpected. I work with British and American mechanics as a respected colleague. My technical knowledge is valued more than in our own army. This war has taught me that competence transcends uniforms and politics." By early 1944, as Allied forces advanced through Italy, while Italian service units supported operations from maintenance facilities across the Mediterranean, the program had achieved institutional permanence. Technical bulletins, training manuals, and organizational structures formalized practices that began as improvised responses to desert warfare's mechanical challenges. The approaching European campaigns would require every maintenance resource available, ensuring these Italian mechanics would continue their unlikely service through the war's conclusion. In workshop compounds from Cairo to Naples, Italian and Allied personnel collaborated with increasing openness and formal recognition. The technical skills that had initially spared these prisoners from standard confinement now positioned them for roles in post-war reconstruction. Each repaired vehicle represented another calculation in a complex equation, balancing former enmity against present necessity and future cooperation. A practical formula for coexistence that would influence the rebuilt Europe these men would eventually help create. Summer 1945. Repatriation Processing Center, Naples, Italy. The British officer handed Technical Sergeant Marco Bianchi his discharge papers and a certificate acknowledging his service in the 27th Italian Technical Maintenance Unit. After 4 years, first as a reluctant prisoner mechanic, then as a co-belligerent specialist, Bianchi was returning to civilian life. He carefully folded both documents into his small cardboard suitcase alongside a more treasured possession, a complete technical manual for the Sherman tank with handwritten annotations from British mechanics he had trained. This knowledge, earned through an unexpected wartime journey, represented capital more valuable than money in a devastated Italy. Between June 1945 and March 1946, approximately 7,200 Italian technical specialists who had served in Allied workshop facilities returned to civilian life. The repatriation process prioritized skilled personnel based on industrial reconstruction needs. British military records document extensive debriefing interviews where returning mechanics detailed their technical experiences, specialized training, and exposure to Allied equipment. Unlike conventional prisoners who returned with only memories of confinement, these men carried technical knowledge that would prove crucial to Italy's industrial revival. The transfer of knowledge occurred at multiple levels. Technical Service Command records confirmed that departing Italian mechanics received copies of repair manuals, technical bulletins, and specialized training materials, documents previously classified as restricted. The official authorization for this transfer, Allied Control Commission Directive 47B, explicitly recognized that Italian industrial reconstruction benefits from technical knowledge repatriation. Many mechanics also carried unofficial knowledge, handwritten notes, sketches of specialized tools, and detailed records of repair procedures developed through workshop collaboration. Post-war industrial applications quickly emerged. Fiat's engineering department hired 317 former technical unit members by December 1945, assigning many to the company's rebuilding truck manufacturing division. Company records from 1946 note that production techniques learned during Allied service contributed to manufacturing efficiency improvements of approximately 28% compared to pre-war methods. Similar patterns appeared at Lancia, Alfa Romeo, and smaller manufacturing concerns across northern Italy, where return mechanics introduced standardization procedures, quality control methods, and efficient repair techniques observed during their Allied service. Individual success stories illustrated broader patterns. Giuseppe Martinelli, a former tank maintenance specialist who served in Egyptian workshop compounds, established a successful agricultural equipment repair business in Lombardy by 1947. His company specialized in adapting surplus military vehicles for farming use, a direct application of skills developed in Allied workshops. Carlo Ferretti, previously assigned to transmission repair units in Palestine, joined Alfa Romeo's development department, where his knowledge of Allied manufacturing tolerances influenced post-war automotive design. Military records indicate that approximately 62% of technical unit members secured skilled industrial positions within 18 months of repatriation, a remarkable rate during Italy's difficult reconstruction period. The statistical legacy appeared in Italy's rapid industrial recovery. Manufacturing productivity in sectors employing significant numbers of former technical unit members exceeded national averages by 31% during 1946 to 1948, according to Economic Cooperation Administration records. Vehicle production particularly demonstrated this influence, with Italian truck and automobile manufacturing recovering to 72% of pre-war capacity by 1948, compared to 47% for general industrial production. This asymmetric recovery reflected both prioritization of transport equipment and the specialized knowledge return mechanics brought to these industries. Anglo-Italian industrial relationships developed directly from wartime connections. British Motor Corporation records document technical exchange programs established in 1947 with Fiat and Alfa Romeo, programs that specifically employed former ISU mechanics as liaison engineers. British Leyland's Italian operations recruited extensively among technical unit veterans, valuing their familiarity with British engineering practices and manufacturing standards. These formal relationships built upon personal connections established in workshop compounds where professional respect had transcended national differences. The psychological transformation extended beyond technical knowledge. Antonio Ricci, who had maintained British tanks at Workshop Compound 12 near Alexandria before supporting Allied advances through Italy, reflected in a 1978 interview, "I began as a captured enemy, became a cooperative ally, and returned as someone who understood that technical competence transcends politics." This perspective shaped my entire post-war career. I could collaborate with former enemies because I had learned that engines don't care about uniforms or flags. Similar testimonials appear throughout oral histories collected decades later. Enrico Lombardi, who served in Palestine maintenance facilities before returning to Milan's manufacturing sector, stated, "The British approach to problem solving, practical, collaborative, respectful of expertise regardless of rank, contradicted everything fascism had taught us about hierarchical authority. This lesson influenced not just how I worked, but how I participated in Italy's democratic reconstruction." Historical assessments confirmed the program's significance beyond immediate military utility. Professor Gabriele Montinari's comprehensive 1985 study, Technical Knowledge Transfer in Post-War Italian Reconstruction, concludes, "The approximately 7,000 mechanics who experienced Allied workshop operations represented a crucial vector for technical modernization beyond their numerical significance. Their integrated experience with standardized manufacturing, quality control procedures, and systematic maintenance protocols influenced Italian industrial practices for decades following repatriation. Modern parallels emerged in subsequent conflicts. During NATO operations in Bosnia, 1995-1996, alliance forces established vehicle maintenance training programs employing local mechanics regardless of former faction affiliation. U.S. Army technical cooperation initiatives in Iraq, 2007-2011, explicitly reference the Italian precedent in program documentation. These contemporary applications demonstrate the enduring relevance of cooperation based on technical expertise rather than political alignment. The full circle of this remarkable story completed itself in unexpected ways. In 1978, during NATO's Flashpoint exercise in northern Italy, British Challenger tanks were serviced in facilities managed by Italian technicians who had begun their careers under former ISU mechanics. The standardized diagnostic procedures, maintenance protocols, and quality assurance methods used in these operations traced their lineage directly to workshop compounds where captured Italian mechanics had first encountered British equipment under desert skies. For men like Technical Sergeant Marco Bianchi, who returned to Turin carrying Allied technical manuals alongside his discharge papers, the war's most valuable legacy wasn't victory or defeat, but transformation through practical cooperation. They had discovered that mechanical principles transcend national boundaries, that technical competence earns respect regardless of uniform, and that shared problem-solving creates connections that political pronouncements cannot break. This pragmatic wisdom, born in workshop compounds where former enemies bent together over disabled tanks, helped rebuild not just vehicles, but the foundation of post-war Europe itself.